There shall be open borders. What if I told you that open borders is the ruling class consensus in America? Or was anyway until Donald Trump took that escalator ride in 2015. This is Something Else with James David Dixon, and this is part 2 of a series I'm calling Nation of Strangers. In the first episode, I talked about how LBJ and a Michigan senator named Phil Hart made America a nation of strangers with their 1965 immigration reform law. In part 2, I examined the ruling class consensus for open borders and how Donald Trump cracked it in just a few years. If nobody has told you this right here, right now, is the nativist moment in American politics. But if nobody grabs that baton from Donald Trump, it could all go away. This is a tale of how two parties, Democrat and Republican, both embrace mass immigration. When we speak of the uniparty, when we talk about two wings of the same bird, their position on open borders is Exhibit A. When it comes to replacement, or the idea that the average American is too lazy, unskilled, and opioided to do the jobs that immigrants will, and that's why we need mass numbers of immigrants, that's a belief held at the highest levels in politics on the red team and blue team both. The business community, the conservatives, want cheap labor. The left, the Democrats, want a new horde of voters so they can turn America into a California-style one-party state. Nobody, none of them, until Donald Trump, asked what's best for the American people. The question simply never occurred to them. They were too busy thinking about themselves. This is also a tale of two men, Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. In summer 2015, Trump and Sanders were singing the same tune opposing open borders. Trump attacked it from the right, Bernie Sanders from the left, and in summer 2015, both gave provocative statements against the open border consensus. If you can hop on the way back machine with me, think back to the 2016 election. The most exciting permutation, the most exciting race we could have had is the one we were denied. Donald Trump versus Bernie Sanders. So right now we're going to look at what both men said and how they've changed since then. But here's the short course. In the time since 2015, Bernie Sanders was jobbed in two straight presidential races, 2016 and 2020. Once upon a time, Bernie Sanders was a maverick and a renegade. Now he's a house cat who poses no threat to Democrat leadership. From 2015 to 2025, Bernie Sanders went from opposing open borders, calling it a right-wing idea, calling it a Koch brothers scheme, to embracing them in his own way. In just that short time, the renegade lost his will to fight. Right now, he's reading from the same sheet of music as Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and Chuck Schumer. In the time since his escalator ride, Donald Trump has doubled and tripled down against open borders, and he's brought the American people with him. In the time since, Donald Trump ran for president 3 times and won 2 of them. In the time since summer 2015, Donald Trump has only grown stronger. The renegade didn't just stay true to himself, he moved the Overton window. He created a new consensus. Donald Trump is more America first than he was that day, and so is all of America. Meanwhile, since 2015, since summer 2015, Bernie Sanders has only grown weaker. The 2025 version of Bernie Sanders doesn't even have any fighting spirit. He won't be remembered like a William Jennings Bryan, who at least won the Democrat nomination for president. Bernie Sanders in 2025 is not a has-been like a Hillary Clinton or an Al Gore or even a John Kerry. He's a never was and a never will be, and he has to live with that as he's seen two men his age, Donald Trump and Joe Biden, hold the presidency. Finally, this is a tale of two publications, left-wing Vox, the right-wing Wall Street Journal. By reading their words, we'll examine the role they played in crafting and defending the open borders consensus. If you take away anything from this podcast or this series, I hope it's this. Open borders were done to you, not for you. Watch as Bernie Sanders treats open borders as a 4-letter word and disdains it as a Koch brothers scheme, as a right-wing dream. The Koch brothers, you probably know, they're conservative donors who made their money in heavy industry. Democrats view the Kochs the way we do or George Soros. Bernie Sanders, take it from here.
No, that's a Koch brothers proposal. The
Really?
idea, of course, I mean, that's a right-wing proposal which says essentially there is no United States.
But it would make a lot of the global poor richer, wouldn't it?
And it'd make everybody in America poor. Then you're doing away with the concept of a nation state. And I don't think there's any country in the world which believes in that. If you believe in a nation state, or in a country called the United States, or UK, or Denmark, or any other country, you have an obligation, in my view, to do everything we can to help poor people. What right-wing people in this country would love is an open border policy. Bring in all kinds of people who work for $2 or $3 an hour. That would be great for them. I don't believe in that. I think we have to raise wages in this country. I think we have to do everything that we can to create the millions of jobs. Do you know what youth unemployment in the United States of America today? If you're white, a white kid, high school graduate, 33%, a Hispanic, 36%, African-American, 51%. You think we should open the borders and bring in a lot of low-wage workers? Or do you think maybe we should try to get jobs for those kids? So I think from a moral responsibility, we've got to work with the rest of the industrialized world to address the problems of international poverty. But you don't do that by making people in this country even poorer.
Ezra Klein can barely hide his shock. But what about the global South? He asks. Klein's colleague at Vox, a man named Dylan Matthews, then scolded Bernie for not thinking of the people of Nigeria when he made his calculations. I could take apart Dylan Matthews' story line by line, but then I'd be putting more effort into his story than Dylan Matthews did, and I won't do that. So here's just some of the highlights. Matthews sniffles that Sanders is, quote, wrong about what the effects of an open border policy would be on American workers, and he's wrong in treating Americans' lives as more valuable and worthy of concern than the lives of foreigners. So you guys know how we in the something else community are all America first? Nobody on the left is. Not one soul. They don't believe that their kid's life is more valuable than the neighbor's life. They don't believe that the neighbor's life is more valuable and worthy of concern than the lives of foreigners. And you don't have to dig very far to see that they don't value life at all. These are the same people who believe, or at least they say, and they insist that you say, that men can get pregnant. These are the same people who portray a woman killing her child as life-saving health care. They live on sinking sand. The words they speak are lies. Matthews starts his essay by quoting the Wall Street Journal's editorial page editor back then, a man named Robert Bartley. Matthews says that if he got to make a constitutional amendment, it would be this: there shall be open borders. Matthews got that from the Wall Street Journal, which has apparently been saying this since 1984, the year I was born. Why open the borders? Well, as Matthews explains, that this would be great for Nigeria and Mexico. Matthews writes, there is no single policy America could adopt that would do more good for more people. An average Nigerian worker can increase his income almost 15-fold just by moving to America. Residents of significantly richer countries like Mexico can more than double their earnings. If you want to know how Dylan Matthews is doing these days, on September 11th, he published a story called The Case for Caring About Shrimp. So these are small thoughts for a man with a big platform. And this is why we, the right, is winning. The left has lost contact with reality, with humanity, and with human beings. Dylan Matthews writes from an ivory tower about a perfect world that has nothing to do with you or your life. He's just some guy with a bad byline. No brain cells were harmed in the making of his essay. Matthews writes without evidence that migration is a human right. I just saw a clip from 2025 with Ezra Klein spoke about men pretending they're women as if that's a human right. The left has gotten away with murder with this human rights construction they put on everything, from drinking water to euthanasia to abortion to elective surgeries that mutilate the body. In 2025, human rights coming from a leftist means as little as an accusation of racism. Both are shop-worn from overuse. Matthews writes that even if there are losers from immigration, it should be possible to compensate them by redistributing money from the winners. What does that even mean? Matthews' essay is written at a high school level. It's full of wild claims, full of statements that assume what must be proven. But the biggest thing it assumes is that any of us would take Dylan Matthews and Vox seriously enough to help create his perfect world. Yes, let's change the face and the character of America so some bored communist who writes about shrimp will feel better about himself. We'll just redistribute some money and it'll all even out. Man, why didn't anyone think of that? Dylan, let me give you the tough love your editors did not. Your essay is an F-. I'd even make the high school kid redo this one. I mean, check out this gem. People are people, so why should it be that we treat potential immigrants so awfully? It's actually not a bad question. I'd ask it with a question. I respond to it with the question. Okay, people are people, so why should it be that we treat potential people so awfully by aborting them? Bernie Sanders to this day claims to reject the open borders label. But with guys like Bernie or John Fetterman or a Bill Maher or a Stephen A. Smith, any of these liberals you like to share because you think they're being reasonable, you always have to check the fine print. Dig a little bit deeper, dig beyond the headline, and you'll see that Bernie Sanders wants a path to citizenship for illegals. What that means is amnesty. And what that means is amnesty as a backdoor open borders policy. It lets Bernie Sanders present as reasonable and strong on the front end. Meanwhile, on the back end, he's handing out citizenship as easily as Dylan Matthews. Bernie Sanders was only ever talking tough. He was never a revolutionary. He was never pro-worker. But if you want to know why back in 2016, this is the race people wanted, Trump versus Sanders, this is why. Here in the hinterlands, I live in Michigan, but pretty much everywhere outside of New York and D.C., both Democrats and Republicans feel failed and let down by their counterparts in Washington. Trump and Bernie were attractive because they were both outside the norm of their party. What happened since is that Democrats decided they liked their norm. They'd stick with it come hell or high water. Meanwhile, Republicans rejected their norm and embraced Donald Trump. Here's how Donald Trump said he would approach open borders in the speech he gave after that 2015 escalator ride. Trump said he would close them. Donald Trump, take it from here.
When do we beat Mexico at the border? They're laughing at us, at our stupidity. And now they're beating us economically. They are not our friend, believe me. But they're killing us economically. The U.S. has become a dumping ground for everybody else's problems. Thank you. It's true. And these are the best and the finest. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're not sending you. They're not sending you. They're sending people that have lots of problems. And they're bringing those problems with us. They're bringing drugs. They're bringing crime. They're rapists. And some, I assume, are good people. But I speak to border guards, and they tell us what we're getting. And it only makes common sense. It only makes common sense. They're sending us not the right people. It's coming from more than Mexico. It's coming from all over South and Latin America, and it's coming probably from the Middle East. But we don't know, because we have no protection, and we have no competence. We don't know what's happening. And it's got to stop. And it's got to stop fast.
But here's what Trump was up against the moment he took that escalator ride. This is the Wall Street Journal column that Dylan Matthews linked in his. When Matthews says there shall be open borders, he was quoting the supposedly right-wing Wall Street Journal. The July 2001 story was called Open NAFTA Borders. Why not? It was penned by the late Robert Bartley. At the time, Bartley was editorial page editor for Wall Street Journal, a position he held for many decades. Here's what Bartley wrote. We annually celebrate the 4th of July with a paean, an essay of praise, basically, to immigration, the force that tamed this vast continent and built this great republic. This is not simply history. Immigration continues to refresh and nourish America. We'd be better off with more of it. Indeed, during the immigration debate of 1984, we suggested an ultimate goal to guide passing policies: a constitutional amendment. There shall be open borders. Bartley continues, the naysayers who want to limit or abolish immigration look backward to a history they don't even understand. The ability to assimilate is the heart of the American genius, precisely the trait that sets the United States off from other nations. Immigration makes the U.S. what it is. I want to focus in on that second to last sentence. The ability to assimilate is the heart of the American genius, precisely the trait that sets the United States off from other nations. Well, as you're going to see in the next episode, President Ronald Reagan told a very different story about immigration in 1984. Reagan, as you will see, encouraged immigrants against assimilating too much. He said that America has assimilated to its immigrants as much as they've assimilated to us. Ronald Reagan actually said that, and he said it right here in Metro Detroit in Macomb County, home of the Reagan Democrat. But what mechanism do we have in the 2020s for assimilation? What mechanism did we have in the 80s? What legal and cultural pressure do we put on people to assimilate? None, right? I'm 41 years old, but in my experience, things don't just happen on their own. Nobody's in the business of assimilation, so assimilation's not happening at scale. And so for decades, we've had the worst of both worlds: mass immigration and minor assimilation. Bartley continues, sealing the border against people willing to risk death is not a practical option, let alone a morally attractive one. The only hope is to manage the flow of people in a constructive and humane way. As President Fox says, he's talking about President Vicente Fox at the time of Mexico, by putting up walls, by putting up armies, by dedicating billions of dollars like every border state is doing to avoid migration, is not the way to go. Remember that conservative you respected who cited the Mexican president as if he's a moral authority? Of course you don't. But this is what passed for conservatism before Donald Trump. And now you see why Trump has drawn so many attacks from the Uniparty. When a man like Trump comes from outside the system, runs on build that wall, and wins, such a man is a danger to the Uniparty. Trump showed that the mass immigration consensus is built on sinking sand. It doesn't represent the wants or lead to the betterment of the average American. In fact, it prides itself on dishonoring what the average American wants in favor of what the ruling class wants for them. You will eat the birria tacos, you will eat the rice bowls, and you will act like this is the best food you've ever tasted. Elite consensus demands nothing less. Bartley continues, north of the border, the solution to the problem of illegal immigration is to make it legal, or at least to normalize the movement of people. A program of temporary work visas would allow Mexicans to go home. The incentive for undocumented aliens is to stay rather than face the border a second time. As far as the idea that the solution to illegal immigration is to legalize it, well, yeah, the solution to bank robberies is to legalize those. The solution to heroin deals is to legalize those. It's a really bad argument. And right now, you've been listening to arguments made on the left, arguments made on the right, and these are all from elite tastemakers. This is from the top of the barrel. I might not think of much of what they're saying, but I assure you the mainstream conservative and the mainstream liberal thinks a lot of Vox and the Wall Street Journal. So by now, it should trouble you that the elite consensus from top publications on the left and the right is so stupid, so small, so thin, so thoughtless, so junior. If these are our betters, we don't have any betters. Just legalize it, bro. Sounds like John Sinclair in the 70s talking about pot. Not about thought leaders in the 21st century talking about the shape and the future of this country. But all you have to do is read their work. It's soon clear that just legalize it, bro, is all they have. In summer 2015, Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump were both attractive because they were both outside the mainstream of their parties. Open borders is the uniparty consensus. Violating it can get you written up by Vox on the left and Wall Street Journal on the right. Bernie Sanders, the maverick, only went so far down that path. Now he's just as uniparty as anyone else on mass immigration. Donald Trump is the one who cracked the open borders consensus. And for that, he took and takes shots from the left and the right. And he's willing to take them because Trump had this wild idea that the policies of the American government should benefit the American people. America for Americans. It's the one approach no president has been willing to take. If Republicans are wise, nativism could be the final frontier, the path to a new, stable majority coalition. But if the America First movement dies when Donald Trump leaves office, you can expect more Mitt Romneys to take his place and more Robert Bartleys to scold them when they try to enforce the laws of the land. America for Americans. That has a real ring to it. But who's going to carry on that message after Donald Trump? Nativism could be the final frontier in American politics. But who's maverick enough after Donald Trump to claim it?